Have mercy upon me, O Yah, according to thy loving kindness, according unto the multitude of thy tender mercies. Blot out my transgressions, wash me thoroughly from my iniquity, and cleanse me from my sin. For I acknowledge my transgressions, and my sin is ever before me. Against thee, O Yah, have I sinned, and done this evil in thy sight. That thou mightest be justified when thou speakest, and be clear when thou
We
judgest.
should be dead, yeah. All of the stuff that we did. Wondering how you forgive. Swimming in all of these sins. I had mercy on your kids. We ain't really know why we should live. We was told to total opposite. The water all banana, we can see it. Thank you for waking us up at the end. If they ain't love, I don't know what it is. Could've kept us dwelling in our sin. Think of Marcy, how we could repent. Coming back to the old covenant. Never know when he coming again. When he coming to spin. Everybody that caught in sin. Fire and temptation, I hope that you win. Let it go, let it blow right with the wind. You gotta endure the pain right to the end. Repairing again. Through all the arbiters for showing your favor. Know our trial, tribulations, and labor. Everybody waiting right on the Savior. Everybody waiting right on the Savior. When he gon' come with a sword. Everybody gon' be caught in the law. He right there, nigga killing galore. He right there, spilling blood on the floor. He gon' be mad cause he died for you. When that tree gave his life for you. Really took every strike for you. Keep commandments, that's what I would do. We should be dead, yeah. All of the stuff that we did. Wondering how you forgive. Swimming in all of these sins. I had mercy on your kids. We ain't really know why we should live. We was told the total opposite. The water all banana, we can see it. Thank you for waking us up at the end. If they ain't love, I don't know what it is. Could've kept us dwelling in our sin. They gon' march out, we could repent. Coming back to the old covenant. Never know when he coming again. When he coming to spin. Everybody that caught in their sin.
Alright, Shabbat Shalom everyone. Hope everyone's having a good Shabbat. This is the second part of the series of Corn, the drug war that is not talked about. So again, I'm very excited for this series. Been wanting to do this for a long time. I'm glad that I'm getting started on the second part. So without further ado, let's get started. Before I do, let me make sure I address some P's and Q's real quick. So again, disclaimer. We got the copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, education, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Alright, so now we are about to get started. So today is going to be a very interesting topic. We're going to go over the history or the origin of corn. More specifically, the modern age of corn. Because corn has been around ever since antiquity, alright, ancient times. It wasn't as accessible in terms of on your phone and computers, because they didn't have those back then. It wasn't as accessible as it was today, but it was a thing, right? Through the forms of prostitution and trafficking and all those things. Those things have always, unfortunately, been a part of Earth's history. But particularly, we're going to go over basically the history of how corn got itself on the internet and all these things. And again, we have joined us Makai. Again, he might chime in when he wants to add some things. And again, feel free anytime. So glad you're here.
Of course, brother. Shalom to everybody who's attending.
Alright, so let's get started. So, in terms of the history of corn, we're going to really focus on basically, we're going to start off with the legalization. And by legalization, I mean how, in terms of obscenity and free speech, how that was able to get legalized, how corn was able to fall under the protection of free speech. And these there are two monumental Supreme Court cases that we're going to go over regarding this, and that would be the Roth versus United States, which was in 1957, and the Miller versus California case in 1973. Now, there are other cases that are related to this, but due to time limits, we're just going to go over these two. So first, we're going to go over the Roth versus the United States. So now, before we get into this, quick background. So prior to the case, the court agreed that there was only one form of expression that could be prohibited as obscenity or libel. Libel is written defamation and fighting words. I'm sorry, not one, but there are categories of free speech that were prohibited: obscenity, libel, and fighting words, right? However, the court had a problem defining these terms, specifically when it came to obscenity. In this case, Roth versus United States, it would be one of the cases that would seek to officially define this term. So, as you can see on the dictionary, it says obscene, of the portrayal or description of sexual matter, offensive or disgusting by accepted standards of morality and decency. And we have the second one, which is offensive to moral principles or repugnant. So, when looking at this definition, it's kind of obvious what obscenity is. In fact, you have in the term similar, pornographic, right? So obviously this falls under obscenity, right? And anything related to sexual immorality would be under this definition. However, we live in Babylon, and words, especially nowadays, mean nothing. I mean,
or many other things.
Oh yeah, shoot, man, you got people talking about what gender is now a spectrum, and all these things. So again, we're living in a country, in a nation that is against Yahweh, right? So obviously, in order to justify sin, you're going to have to overcomplicate simple matters. So another, we got a legal definition. This is from Cornell Law School, right? It says, obscenity is a category of speech unprotected by the First Amendment. Obscenity laws are concerned with prohibiting lewd, filthy, or disgusting words or pictures, indecent materials or depictions. Normally, speech or artistic expressions may be restricted in terms of time, place, and manner, but are still protected by the First Amendment. There are major disagreements regarding obscene material and the government's role in regulation. All 50 states have individual laws controlling obscene materials. So again, there's still this conflict of what is considered obscene and what is not considered obscene, right? Because again, when you have this First Amendment, which guarantees the right of free speech and freedom of the press, now you have to come across this problem of, okay, what speech can be supported by the First Amendment? And then it seems like it can be contradictory when you're trying to take away what it seems to be obscene, when in that person's eyes it may not seem as obscene. So this is just a little bit background of the issues that this case will be addressing. So before we go into it, we have Samuel Roth. All right, Samuel Roth was a Jewish writer / publisher that was known for sending obscene materials through the mail. Roth was later charged and found guilty of violating the federal obscenity statutes. Samuel Roth appealed his case to the Supreme Court. So now we have this man, he's sending obscene materials through the mail. That's how he made money. He was charged and found guilty of violating the federal obscenity statutes. Okay? Now he's going to appeal this to the case. Alright. So obviously he appealed, that this, I have a right to free speech, freedom of expression. So you cannot limit this, and just because you think this is obscene. So now, here comes the Hicklin test. Alright? In order for the Supreme Court to solve this case, they used this test. This test previously came from a British test known as from a case known as Regina versus Hicklin. According to this test, if any part of a material was considered obscene, then the whole thing would be considered obscene. So it doesn't matter if it was the last page of a book and it had an obscene material to it. If that last page was considered obscene, that whole book is obscene. Alright? Now, because of this, the test made no provisions for social or artistic expression when it came to obscene material. So if you wanted, how you've seen those paintings in Renaissance and those sculptures, almost everybody is naked, right? So those types of, that test would limit. They would say, well, what about people who like to paint that and stuff like that? What if that's considered obscene? Then I have no freedom to express my artistic talent, right? Again, this is the complications that you have when you don't, because the little thing about Constitution, if you actually look at the language of it, it's not really specific. It just says freedom of speech, freedom of the press, right? And freedom of religion, but doesn't specify what type of speech, what type of stuff you can be on the press, and what types of religions can be expressed, right? It just says free for all for all. So now that's when you have these complications that come in. Alright? So the last bullet point says that this meant that many publishers were unprotected when it came to sexual expression in their materials. Now, there was a new obscenity test that was given, that was started by one of the Supreme Court Justices, William J. Brennan Jr., this gentleman right here. He decided to fashion a test called the Roth test, later called the Memoir test, which was based on a future case called Memoirs versus Massachusetts. This test stated that for material to be considered obscene, it must utterly be without any social value. This offered better protection for free expression when it came to obscenity laws. Now the question is, what is social value? Were you going to say something? Okay. Right? So what is defined as social value, right? That's the question here. Now, the results of this test is this. It became difficult to get convicted for obscenity. The Supreme Court was forced to basically micromanage issues by reviewing magazines, books, and movies. And so because of this broad term, you have to make sure that it actually has some type of social value, right? And again, the question is, what is social value? The court became fractured. Basically, there was too much conflict regarding whether this obscene thing has any social value. One person could think that this particular obscene material had no social value. Another justice could say, well, it has social value. So now that's an issue. And then on top of that, you got to take into account of children, right? So now there's another issue regarding this test. So now if you have social value, but you want your children to stay away from that quote-unquote social value, now that's a whole nother thing within itself. So because of this thing, the test was overturned, and the case we're about to go over, which is the Miller v. California case. Okay. Unfortunately, I couldn't really get an accurate picture of Marvin Miller. I was trying to look for it, but the picture I was getting was an owner of a baseball team. So I knew that wasn't it. So, but nevertheless, the case is documented. So in 1968, there was a Californian publisher named Marvin Miller, and he was again charged for distributing obscene material. This conviction was confirmed by a California jury and also by the appeals court. So then, you know how the chain of command goes. He goes up to the Supreme Court, and he did receive the same ruling. And this is because the Supreme Court stated that the First Amendment right does not cover obscenity. Now, again, you may be thinking, well, if this case was overturned, what's the problem? Hold on. if the Supreme Court decided that the ruling of the California Appeals Court and the California Grand Jury was correct, then how did porn spread so rapidly if they just said that the First Amendment does not protect obscenity? Well, here's the kicker. In the Roth definition of obscenity, it must be void of social or artistic value to be considered obscene, right? Since that was overturned, there was a new standard within the case. The new standard for obscenity, it said it must be void of serious value. So now this thing just gets even more broader. Because now, again, what is serious value? Now, and this was established in the Miller versus California case. So again, they're still trying to define obscenity according to their own terms. So even though they said the First Amendment doesn't protect obscenity, again, you still have this question of what is obscenity? And with that being said, now you have a greater authority as a law agency, a judge, or a juror to decide whether a particular material is obscene based on what you view as serious value. So now you have people who are up in power, like a judge, right, or a jury, who have different views of what could be serious value, right? So then it's up for grabs at this point. It's technically now you're gambling, all right?
Right.
So
whose opinion matters the most?
Exactly. So right. So now this definition is now dependent on somebody else's opinion. So now you have all this confusion. So again, what is serious value? Who gets to decide? And so if you have these things, like who gets to decide what is serious value, who gets to decide what is serious value? Now it's like, okay, one person has this standard, the other person has that standard. It's conflicting. So now you technically have no standards. And when you have no standards, now you can get to call whatever you want to call. You can call a duck a spade. You can call a cow a unicorn, right? And this goes into the verse in Isaiah chapter 5, verse 20. It says, "Woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light and light for darkness, that put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter." Now, if you were tuned in to the last part of the series, I mentioned that you really can't tell, like, porn is a heck of a thing because you really can't tell if someone is watching that. And even if you could, at the same time, it's viewed as just a form of entertainment. So if you just view it as a form of entertainment, like a genre of entertainment, well, it's just like a comedy movie or romantic movie. It's just more hardcore romance, right? That's just my entertainment. You're technically calling it good, when in reality it's not. It may be it's just a unholy appetite or a potential strong addiction, right? Either way, it's not good for your brain. It's not good for you. But we are living in a world that says, well, it's not bad as long as you watch that stuff in moderation. I'm gonna tell you, there is no watching that stuff in moderation. That's once you watch that, you're hooked. You may not be addicted, but you're gonna want to watch it again, and it's going to have you messing with yourself. But that's a whole nother episode. So now that we've gone through the legalization process about how it can be more widespread, now we're going to have to go through methods of distribution. Again, in the first episode, we mentioned that everything around you is a drug, right? So everybody is a drug dealer, right? If you're a teacher, you deal in knowledge. If you're a pastor, you're going to deal in theology. So with you're dealing certain things is a drug dealer, and drug dealers have methods of distribution, right? So we're going to go over the methods of the ages of distribution. So we have the golden age, internet age, which we're in right now, and the future age. Okay, so let's start with excuse me, drink some water real quick. All right, So we're going to start with the Golden Age. So the Golden Age basically took place a little bit after or during the time of the Miller v. California case, right? Because of this, now pornographic material continued to increase in popularity, right? So much so that now it became a household name, and this was thanks to the newly launched VCR system, right? I know I'm a little bit young for that. I mean, I do remember having one when I was like in first grade, but basically, for those of you who are my age and younger, it was these black boxes that you could put in and insert into like this big other box. That's the best way I can explain it. And you see the image right there, and then you turn it on, and boom, you got your movie. And you would usually you'd have to rent movies. I'm talking like I lived back then, but this is just what I hear. But you'd have to go and go like to your Blockbusters or a video store and get certain movies, and you have to rent them, and then for a certain time you have to bring it back. If you didn't, you have to pay for it. Kind of like how Netflix. Remember Netflix used to had those DVDs.
Man, dang, it's been a minute. Yeah, I don't remember that.
Oh man, so I remember that. I remember you could watch it for a while, then you had to return it back to Netflix or those other, what do they call them? Redbox.
Redbox, yeah.
Yeah, you had to return those too. So it's kind of like that, but it was a lot bigger and less complicated, I guess. Well, actually more complicated because you had to press a bunch of buttons. But the point is, that was a method of distribution in how they distributed those type of movies. They had these things, you could tell what movie was pornographic based on, they would have a label called B movies. B movies were the thing where you could watch it and it was basically, it had a bunch of hardcore or softcore sex in it, basically. It was pornographic, it exposed what shouldn't have been exposed. But it was still considered a genre of entertainment, hence the name B movie, so you knew what type of entertainment it was. So now, most of this information now that I'm getting is when it comes to the Golden Age is from this article called History of Pornography, How We Got Here, right? And I also left references in the description. I'll have references in the last slide. But this is where I'm going to get this part of the series, where I'm going to get this part of the episode, where this information comes from. So now, it says here, a landmark decision by the Supreme Court in the United States changed porn forever in the 70s. In the case of Miller versus California, the case we just talked about, the court changed and redefined the understanding of the term obscenity. After the decision, there was a dramatic drop-off in prosecution due to obscenity. The arrival of some popular porn stars helped, as Nina Hartley, Peter North, and Ron Jeremy, which joined the industry. The first international movie, Behind the Green Door, was released in 1972. With the launch of VHC, which is really VCR format, pornography took thousands of steps forward. It was then that porn became a household name with the development of video technology. According to statistics by Pornhub in 1976, when VCR's format was first launched, only 1% of people in America had VCR. However, more than 70% of VH tapes that were sold were pornographic. So you have 1% of people in America had a VCR, but more than 70% of VH tapes that were sold were pornographic. And that's interesting. You may not own a VCR system, but somehow 70% of people find it. So that means somebody had to be strange. Hey man, you want to come over and watch this with me? Something like that. So
right.
So it somehow is going to spread, right? Now, this kind of made me laugh. It's like VHS tapes completely changed the world of pornography as people were able to pause, play, fast forward, and rewind the material. So if you especially liked a particular scene, you could you could rewind, and I'm laughing because I used to do that too, not with a VHS tape, but on the internet, right? Now, like, you have touch screen, all you got to do is just press that and say 10 seconds back, right?
Mm-hmm.
So back then it had more noise to it because it was more complex, but the thing is, you can still go back and play your favorite part. So now you have a chance to not just portray a particular movie, but a particular scene in that movie in your head and program that in your brain. Right? Just that one scene. Just that one scene in that hour, 2 hour long movie could affect the way you view women, or the way women watch the way they view men or themselves. So that was the golden age, or the VCR age. Now we're in the internet age. This is where we're in now. Oh boy. So, technology and pornography. With the advancement of technology, it allows people to record, take photos instantly at any time. So because of this technology, particularly when it comes to smartphones, they help. You can spread information at a very, very fast pace, right? Right. That's what social media is. You can communicate with someone in Timbuktu just by a simple text message. Even what I'm doing right now, I'm giving you a video, and it's going to portray live all across the internet. And whoever watches this, wherever they are, they're going to see this. I'm in North Carolina. Somebody could see this in France. So that's how fast the internet is. We also have mobile cameras, which can easily take and forward pictures through videos through social media and text messaging. And when it comes to the realm of sexual content, this can lead to what is known as sexting, right? All thanks to the internet, porn has expanded its horizons to the point that now porn is a mainstream industry, right? So now it's an industry, right? Like Amazon, right? So,
and we see that now with OnlyFans. People literally make a living just having sex with each other,
right? Or just posing, sexually. Even on YouTube, right? You can have access to sexual content videos on YouTube. May not be as robust as it is, but you still have people having sexual content on that. Like, I remember I used to like ASMR. They had that on YouTube. Or I remember when I was watching it like crazy, they had things like, was it lingerie try-ons? Now I'm hoping I'm not trying to help anybody look up that stuff, but what I'm saying is that it's everywhere now. That's what I'm saying. So, thanks to the internet. Now, with that fast pace of information comes with increasing popularity. The very first porn site on the internet was established in 1994, and this was called X Videos, and it's still up and running today. It received 4.4 billion views per month by the year of 2012. Today, pornography is a multi-billion-dollar business, and in the U.S., the porn industry makes between $4 and $6 billion per year. That's a lot of money, man. You know what you could do with that? I have no idea. I'm not that rich, but you could do a lot of things with that.
I was just about to ask you what.
I was like, maybe pay bills, student loans, I guess. But like, that's more money than what I can imagine myself doing.
Yeah.
So, but that's how much that makes, which tells you. And they say, what's that saying? Sex sells. It shows you that, but also let's flip it around. Sin sells. Sin will get you some money. All right. Ask most of these people that you call actors and actresses and celebrities how they got there. How they got that much money. They had to sell their soul to get that position. Right. A recent one. What was his name? DC Youngfly. Right. I'm not going to get too much into that. I don't really deal in that realm. But that's another example of DC Young Fly and Jackie O. In order to get that money, you have to do something foul for Satan. That's just what it is. Again, the Bible talks about how Satan is the prince of this world. So right now, everything's under the control of Satan, which means everything's going to be against Elohim, and anything against Elohim is sin. Now, more than 500 movies are made per year in the U.S., which earns more than $20,000 per movie. Pornography is now legal in almost every country except for Muslim countries, China, Russia, and Catholic states in Latin America. When I found out that China didn't have that, I was like, man, I want to move to China. I was really like, but there are other things that are going on in China that will not welcome me there. Yeah. That means that you just have to simply stay in this word and understand these strategies, which we're going to get to if you stick with us in these series. So
that's interesting that our two main rivals are not as depraved as we are.
Exactly, and really, I've heard this is because of really they're trying to increase their military. You can't have, and most of the military, is men. So you can't have men just hooked on corn and at the same time be great fighters.
Right.
Because when you watch that stuff, especially when it comes to the realm of masturbation, you're gonna lose a lot of energy. So we can't have that. Because notice Russia. I mean, there was a thing going on the internet. There was about comparing military commercials per country. Russia and China were like the most manliest commercial ever, and then you got this commercial which was talking about the United States was talking about the alphabet agenda and feminism in the military. It was more focused on that than fighting, and everybody was like, man, we're screwed. If Russia wanted to go to war with us right now, we're screwed.
How recent is that?
That was like 2020, early 2022.
Oh, so recent.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
clearly sees the priorities of this nation.
Exactly.
Are focused on agendas and doing something. So clearly they got something more sinister. They're not worried about no war. They're not worried about getting everybody ready. Right. They don't probably think they're going to get in any bad shape. They probably think everything's all cool. Whatever. I mean, you see the leadership we have, so...
Right. And that actually goes into, I think it's Revelation chapter 18, where it talks about how fallen Babylon is. It talks about how prideful she was. I think it also mentions that in the book of Isaiah as well. Real quick, we can go there real quick. It's a live stream.
You're going to Isaiah? I'm at...
okay, I might go to
Revelation.
You can read. You find it.
I'll start from verse 1.
Okay.
And after these things, I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon, the great is fallen, is become the habitation of devils, and is the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, that you be not partakers of her sins, and that you receive not her plagues. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and Elohim has remembered her iniquities. Reward her even as she rewarded you, and double unto her, double according to her works, and the cup which she hath filled to her double. Keep reading all the way?
No, I think I might have gotten it confused.
Okay.
I think it's Revelation chapter 17. Sorry, guys. Hey, you read verse 14?
Chapter 18?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Okay, I'll read it real quick.
Okay.
It says, "And the fruits that thy soul lusted after are departed from thee, and departed from." Sorry, verse 11. I'm gonna start there.
Okay.
"And the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buyeth their merchandise any more. The merchandise of gold and silver and precious stones and pearls and fine linen and purple and silk and scarlet and all thine wood, and all manner vessels of ivory, and all manner vessels of most precious wood, and of brass, and iron, and marble, and cinnamon, and odors, and ointments, and frankincense, and wine, and oil, and fine flour, and wheat, and beasts, and sheep, and horses, and chariots, and slaves, and souls of man. And the fruits that thy soul lusted after are departed from thee, and all things which were dainty and goodly are departed from thee, and thou shalt find them no more at all. The merchants of these things which were made rich by her shall stand afar off, for the fear of her torment, weeping and wailing, and saying, Alas, alas, that great city that was clothed in fine linen, and purple and scarlet, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls. For in 1 hour so great riches is come to naught, and every shipmaster, and all the company in the ships, and sailors, and as many as trade by the sea, stood afar off." I was trying to get the one where she was saying that she was rich, and she didn't think that there was going to be any calamity coming towards them. Nevertheless, if I find out, I'll let y'all know on the next one. Don't want to take up too much time. But basically, in other words, what we're saying is that America's going to get theirs, and they think they're not. So their priorities are not focused. But anyway, back to the subject. We got on that because we understand that the content of pornography is illegal in those countries, and like Makai said, most of them are our rivals, China and Russia. They're getting ready, right? Here, meanwhile, America is focused on other things and trying to make us weak as citizens, especially as Israelite, and specifically Israelite men, trying to get us unprepared and hooked on all these things instead of trying to get ready for the coming trouble, otherwise known as Yaakov's trouble, right? All right. Now, did you know they got an Oscar award for corn?
Did not know that, brother.
Yeah, I mean, I was shocked when I found that. Wow. I was like, well, dang. I was like, dang, man, that's crazy. So in 1984, I know, right? This country is crazy. In 1984, Pornography stated to have their own version of the Oscars called the AVN, or Adult Video News. The awards are usually hosted in the middle of the Oscar and Golden Globe ceremonies. What a coincidence, because like you already know, all that heathen stuff is going on with the Oscars and the Golden Globe. And if you're actually looking deeper into these things, you find that these awards are connected to Babylonian culture, Egyptian culture, things that number one, these are the countries that oppressed our people, and these are the countries that were involved in divinations and witchcraft and worshiping other gods besides Elohim. So it's not really a shock that these type of award shows, the AVN awards, are going on around this time. All right. Thanks to the internet, porn has become a genre of entertainment worldwide, to the point that this wickedness is being rewarded by the nations of this world. Now we're going to the future age. This is from the same article, History of Pornography, How We Got Here. It says here that the next frontier of the porn industry is 3D pornography. It means you get your like red and blue shades or something like that, and just watch it. Be all up in your face. Anyway, with the growing popularity of 3D technology, and thanks to movies such as Avatar, companies in the porn industry are trying hard. They're trying hard, guys, to film a 3D porn video. The first successful example is 3D Sex and Zen Extreme Fantasy, a movie recorded in Hong Kong. So, and I want to go back here, just came up with a point that said they're trying hard. Like, you see how people are really planning and working hard to produce wickedness throughout the earth. And then it just begs a question for us as believers, as Kodashim or set apart ones. Are we working hard to make sure that we're right with Elohim and trying to spread righteousness and this gospel throughout the earth? Just something to think about. So, in conclusion, we see that the popularity and widespread pornographic content started with legal matters, particularly the Supreme Court. So you have the government technically to thank for all this widespread debauchery, right? And because of this has affected the minds of many people, specifically our men. And as I stated in the first video, we're going to come from the perspective as men because we are that. If women find any value in this, great. But I just know that we're going to come from this perspective of men, based on, we can only speak on our experiences. Starting from VHS tapes to World Wide Web and soon virtual reality / 3-dimension, porn has stuck to the hearts and spirits of men with lust, which have prevented the true power of men, especially when we as men should be connected to the Most High Yah. Therefore, porn is a declaration of war towards Yah and his people and his men, to keep us from doing the work that Yah has prepared for us to do. This is why it is important to understand when and why porn has started, so we can overcome it. Because it's not just enough to know that your enemy exists. You must know why it exists. Your enemy exists and how it got there, right? It's in 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 4-6, it says, "For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through Elohim to the pulling down of strongholds, casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of Elohim, and bringing into captivity every thought to the obedience of Mashiach, and having in a readiness to revenge all disobedience when your obedience is fulfilled." So we're at war, but the war isn't through carnal things. You can't beat this off with a sword or a machete or an AK-47, although those are pretty nice to have. But it's not going to help you when it comes to this struggle or any spiritual struggle, right? You have to have spiritual weapons, and when those thoughts come in, you have to cast them down immediately, right? And put them under submission. It's not enough to just cast them down. You got to put them under submission of the Mashiach, right? So, hold on. I thought I had another verse here. Oh, that was in the first one. But again, when it comes to Ephesians chapter 6, it's important to have the full armor of God. That's how we're going to cast these imaginations down and put them under the submission of Hamashiach. So, with that being said, and I understand we haven't really gone through the strategies yet, but they're coming. Just stay tuned with us. We have to, again, understand how this enemy works, how this lust and this pornography appetite or addiction has us has us keep getting trapped into relapsing. So just be patient. It's going to take time, but we have to lay the foundations in order to fully help ourselves, because we're not perfect in this, and you guys as well. So I'm here the references of the information here, and I also include them in the description below, so you can check what we're saying. So if you don't have anything else to add,
I'm not sure if this is the verse you were talking about, but it's in Revelation 18 verse 7. How much she hath glorified herself and lived deliciously. So much torment and sorrow give her. For she says in her heart, I sit a queen and am no widow, and shall see no sorrow. Therefore shall her plagues come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she shall be utterly burned with fire. For strong it is Yahweh Elohim who judges her.
Yes, okay, thank you. That was the verse I was looking for.
Okay.
So again, back to that other topic, it was like we're saying how America is now. Their priorities are not straight. They think that they're too strong to be destroyed, but the Most High has judgment for them. And we, and actually kind of relates to this subject, and we have to be prepared for that coming judgment. We don't want to be too attached to the things of Babylon, so we can be prepared for that coming destruction. So, thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed and were edified by the information that we gave. Until next time, Shabbat Shalom.